Welcome back to the Keegan and Company podcast. For those who are new to the show, my name is Keegan Hipgrave. And guys, if you haven't already, could I get you to jump over, give us a little like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on, whether it's Apple, YouTube, Spotify. It's a great way for us to grow the podcast, grow the platform, and just have some incredible conversations like I'm going to have today. In this episode, I'm joined by former professional soccer player, Cobi Jones. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm fabulous. It's a good day today.
Mate, it's we're here in LA. We're here in the Movember office in LA. It's our first time here, and mate, the weather's beautiful.
Yeah, welcome. You know,
mate, you grew up here. This is your home?
Yeah,
California?
this is home. California's home. Los Angeles is home. You know, been here since the very. Geez, I always say I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and I claim it when I need to. But you know, I left there when I was like 3 months old. Came out to LA. You know, ever since.
Mate, I've got I'm so excited for this conversation, man. It's I don't get to have many conversations with soccer players, you know, especially over here in the States. This is a new trip for us, so really keen to unpick your story, especially you know, the way you were in the game, your journey through the game, but also the transition out of the game. I think this is going to be a really cool conversation. Before we do get stuck into it, I think a really fitting part is like where the story starts. Like what did growing up look like for you?
Well, growing up, it was, you know, geez, and I hate saying this, but I'd grown up in the 70s.
Yeah, not too long ago, brother.
Yeah, not too long ago. It was, you know, it was interesting, right? I mean, playing this sport, playing soccer, you know, out here in Los Angeles was a little different, right? No one really played it. There's a lot of like, what's that? What are you doing? What's soccer? What it's all about? I think that's one thing that people don't understand at that time. No one really knew. It was just kind of hey, something new, let's try it out.
So why soccer? I mean, imagine you probably could have played a choice of multiple different sports. Why was soccer the one?
Oh, you haven't seen my height then, right?
Mate, you're a natural athlete.
I'm not playing basketball, you know?
Don't doubt yourself, man. Don't doubt yourself.
Well, when it comes down to it for my parents, I think that there's a couple of different reasons. There's the parenting reason, and then how it happened. And basically, you know, we're back in that side panel station wagon. You know, it looks like the side panels. I don't know if they had it in Australia, but it was the big thing here. The big old station wagon with those wooden side panels, and I was in the back, and we were driving by the park, and my cousin was there. He was playing, and he's like a brother. He's 1 year older than me. We grew up together. So I was like screaming in the back of the car, you know, to my parents, "Hey, let's go. Let me go. I want to go play with Corey." And so they pulled over. You know, long story short, asked the coach, "Hey, can you go out there and play with his friend?" Coach said, "Sure, why not?" Grabbed a jersey, toss it to me, and that's how I started playing soccer, right? You know, a few things you can take out of that. First, that, you know, no seatbelt law. I was in the back of the car, you know, just floating around. And the fact that they just said, "Yeah, here you go. Here's a jersey, and just go out and play." And I think that is it's so different than what you see today, where you have to sign 1,000 forms and all these different things. But in the end, that's what kind of started it. What continued it, I think, was the fact that I had success at it because I just love to run. You know, having success always makes you want to do it more. And that kind of, you know, tired me out and stuff. And the parents were like, "Ding, ding, we got it."
Were you a pretty energetic kid, I imagine?
Yeah, I mean, those two sports I did growing up all the time were soccer and track, you know, so I loved running. You know, it says it all right there, right? So
I think that's definitely an interesting conversation. Like when you have success at a younger age, it kind of gives you that fuel and that little bit of confidence to keep going. Obviously, we have a lot of conversations with different athletes on this podcast, and a common theme that I've found is that they had some sort of success at an early age that sort of gave them a little bit of confidence to keep going, because obviously you enjoy it a little bit more, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. And success isn't like, oh yeah, you're winning the trophies and all that stuff. Success, people have to remember at a young age, it's about maybe you learn something new and you're able to try something different and then eventually do it, or you see yourself getting a little bit better at it. That's what a kid wants. You know, it's not about like we see a lot today. It's like, we're gonna go out and win everything. No, that's not what it is. You need to learn. You need to learn, let the kids learn, and through that process of learning something, they find success at every little stage. You
said you had it was a unique sport at the time. Did you get pushback from any of your mates?
No, I didn't get pushed back from my friends, or they wouldn't have been my friends. It was basically during the 70s here in the United States, that was the first big push of soccer, of AYSO and all of that. So a lot of my friends were playing the game. It was when I got like a little bit older where you would have some of the, you know, pretty typical, right? Where you have like some of the American football players being like, "Wow, what are you doing? You know, what's that? You know, what's this?" And then in certain areas where you would go, that there just wasn't an understanding of the game. But in general, AYSO was really starting to bloom, and you saw it on TV everywhere. So there was a little bit of, we don't know what it is, but let's take a peek at it.
It's an interesting piece because you obviously, like, you wouldn't have got to see a lot of, like, I'm guessing, role models on TV earlier in your career when you first started, but then later towards your career, you know, you get to see them on TV, or you might have heard about them, might have gone to the games. At what point did you think that it could be a career?
Funny. I never thought it was going to be a career.
Really?
Yeah. You know, that's how old I am. The role models that I had was Pele.
Yeah.
Because it's the one name that you knew.
Yeah.
You know, and here you never at that time, the only way you got to see a soccer game, and I remember doing this. Now, mind you, this is around my junior high and high school level of doing this, is when there would be a satellite game at a Mexican restaurant, and everyone would chip in $20, and then you go into a room and huddle around it, and you can see a game.
Gotcha.
You know, so for me, there was no role model. No, definitely no American role model. Very little Euro role models. Even like people will talk about some of the legends of the game, you know, that were in Europe. You know, you could talk about Cruyff and all that. For me, it was just hearing about it. I never really got to see it. You know, I didn't get to see it until, you know, their post-career, and then I would see some old videos and be just like, oh, that's cool. Because my parents weren't soccer people. I wasn't in a family that was just like soccer oriented. And then, as I said, it wasn't on TV. There was nothing on TV. And my parents weren't paying, you know, money to go to these restaurants and to see these things. So it truly was a sport that I had a passion for, that I loved, and that's why I played that game.
I think I'm very curious about your parents as well, because they're academics, right? Like school teacher, and your dad has a PhD in chemistry, which is it's like I'm very similar. My parents were both academic as well, and they very kindly pushed me towards the academics before going professional. Was it similar for yourself?
Oh yeah, there was no question in the household. Grades were first and foremost. The sport, very unlike to what we have today, the sport was for fun. You know, you're doing that for fun. So if you don't get the grades and you don't do that, I knew that I would never be able to play the sport. Oh yeah,
that was a talked about rule in the house.
No, it wasn't even talked about. It was just known. That's how deep it was. I mean, when you had look, before my mom, you know, to the day she passed, she was all about academics. She talks about it with my kids today about academics. She would give rewards off of academics, nothing else. You know, that's your fun. That's your free time. That's really, okay, you're going to have a good time. Yes, we'll support you there, but you got to have the education first. Same thing with my dad, like you said, him being a chemist, you know, so that's all it was. And I think one thing we have to remember too, they grew up in a segregated South. So the way to get out was by your education, by academics. So that was ingrained into them from a very young age, and thus ingrained into me.
Did that help you as you went into the professional sport?
Oh yes.
How so?
This is one thing that I think people tend to think, where they think, oh, like jocks, they're not smart, they don't know what they're doing. It's like for the American audience, I'll say, do you understand all the different plays and everything that you have to memorize within any sport? But let's say professional American football, like a quarterback, everything that he has to know, and all those players on the field, it's basically if he says a certain word, it means you're going this way and up instead of this way and down, you know, all these different things. So there is an intelligence there. I just think that if you excel and push your intelligence in certain areas in the academic sides, that shows up, you know, within everything else that you do. You know, it's just the nature that if you're living and breathing your education and just, you know, exercising your brain, it makes it a lot easier on the field in everything you do. And for me, I think it was the same way. It's just that I would always, and you know, you're a professional too, you're always calculating on the field. And the games that you have the most success, you're calculating everything that you need to do, that your teammates are doing, the other team's doing, and the direct opponent in front of you is doing. All of that's happening rapid fire.
Man, I love that piece so much. I don't think anyone's ever articulated it so well, because there is. Like, there has to be an education, because you were putting so many hours of work into your craft, and I see it both. I see it from both sides, because, you know, you hear that conversation of like balance, or you got to have things outside of sport or outside of your thing. So when I was playing, while I loved my sport, rugby league, I was also studying business. I was very interested in mental health and psychology, and so that would always sit aside, and that kind of helped me, gave me a little bit of balance to get away from sport when I needed to. Yeah. But then I also saw other guys who were so dialed into their craft and nothing else mattered. And I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think it's purely individual.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think everybody is different, and you have to find out what works for you.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's, I always talk about it. Look, you're always going to have a Tiger Woods, right? You know, that starts at 3 years old, and you're just go golf, and they have success, and they're like the best in the world, and that is fantastic. That's the dream, right? But then there's so many steps along the way where something can go wrong. How many people out there thought that they were going to be the next Tiger Woods, and it didn't work out? You know, at 5 years old, at 10 years old, at 15, 20, at every stage. So for me, and this is personally for me, it was about understanding that, okay, once I hit it where I found out that, okay, something can come of this, I still wanted to have those things on the side, that I was always working on other things. And as one of my brothers, you know, always said to me, he's all, have a backup plan to your backup plan.
I love that piece. What was that moment? You said that moment where it was going to go forward, and you had the academics next door, right next to it. What was that moment when you first got into it? It
was a conversation with, and this is jumping over a lot, but it was a conversation with my mom, and this was probably the second one where it was me, my mom, and my dad, and it was deciding what that next stage was going to be. And it was just after the Olympics where I had, you know, little preface on it, I had to leave college to go to the Olympics, and with the idea of a little bit of fight with my dad of that you're going back to school to finish up college. But then after the Olympics, I got asked to go to the national team and prep for the World Cup. And that was kind of the moment I was like, okay, something could possibly come of this. Even though we were still talking after the World Cup, I'd go back. But it was a talk with my mom, my dad, and me. Dad saying, no, you're not going to that thing. You don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And for the second time in a row, my mom said, this is an opportunity that will not come again. School will always be there. Take the chance and go. And, you know, mom and dad's argue, you know who wins.
That's such a fitting piece, man. I love that. I get it 100%. But that's an interesting piece, that you've already gone to the Olympics, like you're already representing your country, but then you're still having these conversations with mom and dad. How old were you?
Oh, geez, I was 22. Wow. 22 years old. Yeah, just like the last couple years of college. I think I have like, you know, I still haven't gone back to this day, you know, and that's like one of my dreams, you know, especially since my mom passed, to try to finish that up. But it's a year left, you know, is what I got. But yeah, I was having that conversation, you know, a lot, you know, internally with myself, what I was going to do, but also, you know, in the end, kind of put out there for the family to deal with.
I constantly think about like what I learned from professional sport when I was in there, and I think one of the biggest things was the ability to have tough conversations. I don't know if this is something that you resonate with. I'm keen to get your thoughts on it, but tough conversations with coaches, whether you played a terrible game, whether you played a good game, it might be with owners of clubs, it might be with other teammates, you know?
Right.
Is that something that you resonated with throughout your professional career? Because I do want to talk about your career, right? You know, 15 seasons at LA Galaxy, like incredible career. You had a couple of years over in the Premier League, which is very, very cool. Tough conversations. Is that something that comes to mind at all?
Yeah, you know what's funny? It's like, you know, like you said, everyone has a different personality. My personality was like to internalize and try to get better on my own and show through example. You know, so there were tough conversations, but I have to admit, you know, mine came later on, where it was almost to a point where I was about to like explode, you know, or something like that. And I can remember some tough conversations with my coach of, you know, just calling the coach out in front of the whole team when we were having a situation where we weren't playing well, and you know, it was early in the season, and the coach was thinking, "No, you guys, you're giving up," and I was just like, "Dude, it's one game. It's one game. We had a bad game. You're coming at us, you know, more than you need to," and it just went on in front of the whole team. And I think it actually shocked the coach because I never really would come out. So it was like he backed off and he was like, okay. And then we went out and we started winning games after that, you know. So it worked out for me.
It's funny that the full circle. But I imagine, it gets to that point where it is a bit of a build up, and then you got to have that conversation. It seems like it all worked out afterwards.
Yeah. It did work out. Tough conversations are geez, it's part of life, you know, and then like you said, I think sports teaches you a lot, and I think that's one of the great things of sports. It puts you in positions where you're getting prepped for life, where you have to have the tough conversations, you know, because I've had many of those, and sometimes you don't have them soon enough, and they turn into brawls on the practice pitch. You know, you've seen that before, right?
Was there any brawls back in the day?
Oh yeah, dude. And this is one of the things I get about with sports today. Everyone goes, "Oh my God, this and this." Dude, we used to have fist fights. Yeah. There were fist fights, you know, on the field. But the thing is like, you know, like the next day, everyone's like, "Oh, hey, what's up? It's cool." You know?
Oh man, I subscribe to that so much. But how, like a little bit of beef, a little bit of a brawl.
Yeah.
You're in a system or an environment with super high competitive, higher testosterone blokes, like, of course. But then afterwards, might have a beer, coffee with them the next day, and it's all fine.
That's it.
Mate, we touched on learnings. I really want to talk about your career. You know, one of the longest standing Galaxy members, which is incredible. What do you think is some of the biggest learnings that you took out of your career that you've taken into everyday life? And that's a big question. I know that's a big question.
Yeah.
Is there anything that comes to mind, that pops into mind?
You know, I'm sure you've asked a lot of people this, and it's like it varies, you know, with everyone. For myself, even my answers have varied over the years. And I think where I've settled for quite some time now is consistency. You know, I think that's probably been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, is that doing something consistent, you know, makes everything better, because you get better, you know, at it. You strengthen yourself mentally and physically if you're doing something consistently, and that's one of the big things I try to take out. And consistency will in the end beat out like the shine and the razzle dazzle. You know, and I look at my career from it, and I look at how I was able to be so long with the Galaxy and so long with the national team, is like I was very consistent with my training. Like I would continuously train. I didn't get injured a lot, you know, but I made myself into a position, you know, where I was consistently good on the right. I could play on the left. I could play up top. So I gave options for the coaches as well. That's probably a little bit of a second, you know, kind of, I guess, skill set that I built up, you know, during my career. But it was the consistency, I think, over and over, and that willingness to work. You know, that's what it comes down to. You got to be able to work.
Practically, what does it look like? Is it being at training early, consistently? Is it doing your rehab? Like, I'm trying to give some like practical takeaway tips, because mate, it's very rare for someone to spend such a long time in a career, right? In any career, let alone a professional sporting team. I'm trying to understand, like, what are the little things that can help? Like, obviously consistency is a big part of it, but practically, what did it look like?
Okay, I'll tell you this. Along with that consistency, you got to have fun. You got to find your fun within it. Because if you don't have the fun within it, you're going to be like, this sucks, I'm out of here. You know, so that allowed me, having fun in those moments, allowed me to have that consistency. And in the practicality of it, it was getting in there early. Like I can think of through my career, look, I'm like any, you know, it's like you said, young testosterone kid in the 20s. It's just like, I'd show up late and just like, you know, not late to training. I not late to training, but I would come in there right before, pop on my shoes. Okay, let's go. I'm ready, like that. You know, as you get older, it's like, okay, I need a little treatment before.
Where's the masseuse?
Little this and that. And I guarantee you, some of the trainers, Ivan Pierre, they'll tell you, like, I wasn't afraid to make sure that I got the treatment that was needed after the fact. And in that, kind of what I said before, I found the the joy and the peace of by being in the training room, having fun with the trainers, becoming good friends with the trainers, joking around in those situations, so that, you know, when you're done with practice and you know you got an hour in the training room, you can have a good time while you're in there, and that's a big part of it. So the consistency is there, the practicality of, yes, okay, I would get there early, I would make sure that I'd warm up, I'd go out a little bit early. You know, for soccer, I'd be doing 5v2. Some of the best years at the Galaxy were the years when we used to go out. It started out with like 4 or 5 guys would go out and we'd do 5v2 and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden it was more and more, and some of those best seasons we'd have like all the guys out there, we're playing small-sided games and 5v2 before practice even starts. And there are multiple times the coaches would come out and they just sit there and watch and let us just go into training time and then start the training afterwards.
Well, they would obviously recognize that that's such a great piece.
Yeah.
You know, when they have it, not even just the ability to, like, to have fun and keep it playful, but imagine all like the technical little fun things within those little games, right?
Oh, that's it. I mean, within this sport, within soccer, you learn everything in 5v2, you know, and that's why you see it from the young kids should be playing it more, all the way up to the top players in the world. You can see, like, you can go on Instagram or whatever and see the little videos. They're doing 5v2, trying to meg each other. You know, that's it. But that's where the little skill sets come through. 5v2, small-sided games, uncoached. Uncoached. That's a bit, not someone telling you, you've got to move here, you got to move there. There is a reason to this day everyone talks about how fantastic, you know, the South American players are. Because a lot of their beginnings, it's uncoached and it's free play.
What is it about being uncoached?
You take risk and you're not scared to take a risk. And you're not directed in everything you do, especially at a young age when you're learning something and you're trying to do a step over and they're like, no, you've got to do it like this. And it's like, well, okay. You don't want to overcoach someone because then they get stiff, then they get scared. Oh, am I going to make a mistake? No, let them go out and just do whatever. Let them play. Let them play.
Man, that playful thing is so, I love that. I love that idea, and I especially love it for kids who are coming through. I think that's a really cool takeaway. I imagine there's probably going to be like a few parents that are listening to this where it's just like, it can get strict, you know. It can be like, this is where we're going to training, you know, you got to do rehab. If you want to be the best, you got to do this. But I love that piece of keeping it fun. Again, like, I got a lot of friends who play different sports, and another big conversation that comes through is like, I guess, like falling out of love with the game at certain periods of your career, especially when you're in a career for 5, 10 plus years. And there might not be, but was there any times throughout your career where it got tough and you're like, oh, is this something that I really want to keep doing?
You know, are we talking about youth or
I'm talking about you. Yeah, you're talking about you.
No, at the young level or at the pro level?
Pro level.
At the pro level? Yeah, I mean, you have ups and downs there all the time when you have a terrible season and you're just like, this sucks. You know? But I mean, I guess I had such a love for the game that you know, I wanted to stick with it. I mean, the biggest part of that is really trying to get over it mentally and having like almost a mental exercise, you know, with yourself, just understanding that I'm a big believer that the bad times won't last. Just like I'm a big believer, the good times won't last. Gotcha. You know, and that's very important. And if you can understand that, you know, there's a way that you can get through most of these issues. Because look, when I first started in '96 here with the Galaxy, you know, we had a fantastic first season but lost in the final, you know. The second season was all right. '98, another fantastic season, but didn't make it into the final. '99 made it to the final again, but lost again. 2000, you know, great season. 2001 made it to the final, lost again. So we lost, you know, like all these times. It wasn't until like the 4th time so that we finally won. So during that whole time, I'm like, yeah. You know,
that's the roller coaster. That's the roller coaster.
That's the roller coaster of sports. That's the roller coaster of life. You've got to be able to figure it out. Of, can I find a way to get through this? You know, can I get through this moment? You know, and that's probably the biggest thing, is to tell yourself it's just a moment.
So you think it's an awareness piece? Like, because I want to be able to think, like, and having conversations with mates who are in there, it's just, I constantly think, like, well, what's a good piece of advice? Like, what would be a good way to I guess, like, help them get through it? And some people might not want to keep playing, which is totally okay. Yeah. But if it's just that awareness piece, just like, find the fun, keep it going, and like ride out through these low times, because it's going to get better potentially.
Yeah, find the fun, as you said, and I would also add, try to find the child that wanted to play this game to begin with. You know, remember that and bring that out in the training sessions. Because, and I'll relate this to the fact it's like everyone always asks me afterwards, what do you miss the most about it? Oh, you must miss those games and all the fans and everything. Yeah, you miss that to a degree. I miss the training sessions because that's where you have all the fun, the locker room, the training sessions, because you're talking smack with your boys. If you can find the fun there, when you're going through a downtime and you can bring that in and just go, you know what, screw the games and all that, but yeah, this is why I liked it. This is why I played football, or this is why I played American football, this is why I played rugby, you know, for these reasons. And you can find it in training. Those little moments of joy will keep you going forward and get you through those tough times.
Mate, I love that. That's such a great piece. In terms of career highlights for your career in the pro, is there anything that stands out? Moments, games?
Plenty.
What's
Plenty.
Is there one that stands above all others?
Well, I would say, I'd say there's two that are right up there. You know, winning that first championship with the Galaxy, you know, because we had suffered 3 times before, losing in the finals. You know, that can be devastating.
Play that out for me.
Well, so we ended up playing New England, right, in the final in New England, and it was just like, oh boy, you know, there's 60-some thousand fans there. You know, I was captain of the team at this time, and just trying to figure out a way in 02, how are we going to do this? We had lost, you know, the year before. We had lost a couple other times. It was one of those things, you know, are we going to be the Buffalo Bills, you know, so to speak? And I love that term translates all over the world. You know?
Mate, I thought my Aussie accent was going to trump us on this interview, but we're good, mate.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, going through that and prepping for that game and playing in that game, and it was crazy because we had chances. You know, we had brought in a new striker in Carlos Ruiz. This was his first year. He was fantastic at Guatemala, a good friend, and he was fantastic, and he was scoring goals at will through the league. And I can remember during the game, I had set him up, you know, probably on a breakaway, you know, but he missed it, you know, and it was like, and I'm thinking in my head, oh damn, is this going to happen again? You know, like this. And we had gotten to a situation where we went to overtime, and it was crazy, right? Because they, New England, had one of our former players too on their team, and they had this situation like coming down the left wing. You know, mind you, it's overtime, and they did some type of cross. I can't remember if it was deflected or not, but it literally caught our keeper, you know, washing windows, where it was going over his head, and we're just like, oh, I was going, not again, not again, and it went over his head and hit the crossbar, you know, and then came out. And then it was off of that break, you know, where we came out, and it was Chris Albright, you know, and Tyrone Marshall that were a part of it, that and laid the ball across to Carlos Ruiz, and it was a bouncing ball that I was like, well, he's gonna miss this one too, but he actually put that one into the back of the net, and then because it was sudden death too, and that finished it off, and we won the championship at that point, and that was like, you know,
wow,
oof,
that's going to be huge.
like, you know,
I imagine you had some good celebrations afterwards as well.
Oh, some fantastic celebrations after
That's
that.
probably some of the best.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of the biggest things for me is, like, I had lost twice to Bruce Arena, who was came in to be the U.S. national team coach, but was DC United, and I remember to this day, it was after the game. We were at the hotel, and we were at a bigger hotel. There were a few different bars, and I wanted to get a drink, and I went up to a different bar, and Bruce was there, like, by himself, you know, at the bar, and I was just like, yeah, because he always had some comments, you know, and he was the national team coach now and all this stuff, and he walked up and he looks at me and goes, "You finally got one." You know, like that.
Yeah, man, we finally got there.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, yes, that's right. You know, I was very happy about it, going damn straight. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, mate, it is cool to see, like, all and I imagine it made it so fun because of all the hardships and all the hard work beforehand, right? It would have to be.
Oh yes, that's it. oh my God, it's that term. If it, if it was easy, everyone could do it, right? It's supposed to be hard,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the things when I talk to kids too. It's like you got to understand this is supposed to be hard. When you're trying to excel to the highest level, it's supposed to be hard. And in so doing, in that it is so hard, understand that when you do accomplish something, acknowledge it, love it, savor it, because guess what? It's so hard, you don't know when or if it's gonna happen again.
I love that.
You gotta tell the kids. I try to tell my kids that,
Yeah.
all the time.
How does that look in your household? You got 2 young boys that are at very impressionable ages at the moment, which I'm sure that'll keep your hands busy. What does it look like for them in terms of coming into not professional sport, but just sport in general? Like, is it everything you've told me about keeping it fun, keeping it light? How do you navigate these conversations?
It's tough. I'll be honest, as a dad, it's very different because you get emotionally involved in it because it's your kids. But then also you have the situation of your kids look at you as dad, not a professional player that knows anything about sports.
They might have the best coach right here, but it's like, come on, Dad, we know what we're doing.
Like, Dad, leave us alone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I went through it at the early stages. I had told myself early on, I am not going to be the dad that forces my kids to play soccer. Now I am the dad that forces my kids to play sports. You have to play something because I think sports are so important into just building character. So I had the situations where it's like, okay, I'm just sitting back, in AYSO and stuff, and a lot of parents would look at me and I'd be, nope, I'm just chilling and hanging back. Now, is that the right thing or not? I still don't know if it was or not to this day. But it's what I chose because I didn't want to be the parent that we hear about that's like screaming and yelling on the sidelines. Now, have I had moments where I broke and yes, I have, of course. Every parent does, but you find that, I've had the situation where my kid is kind of like, taken aback and then you also have the ones where your kid gets motivated, all this. So look, one thing I think all of us have to realize, we're all going through this for the first time, and you have to figure it out and try to find out what works best for your kid. And it's not the same thing for everyone. But in my household now, the kids are playing sports and they are liking it, and that's the important thing. My oldest is playing basketball, still can't believe that, but he's 13 and he's taller than me, and like that. And I got my 10-year-old that's playing soccer, so it's interesting. The oldest is basketball, soccer, and the youngest is soccer, basketball.
A big thing that I took out of that was the character. You said you want them to have good character. What are the traits that you want to pass on to them? Oh,
not giving up. Not giving up, but that's probably maybe that leads and touches on that consistency again. I don't mind like if they want, as you kind of mentioned, if they want to stop playing sports, that's fine. But you can't stop in the middle of season.
Yeah.
And you can't stop on a negative note. That's important for me. If you go and you have a good game or something like that, and okay, and you want to consider at that point, okay, then think about it. I don't want you thinking about, it's a terrible game or you get smashed and then you're like, I want to quit. No, I don't want to allow that.
Because that's something I wanted to pick apart. It's just like, how do you know if it's giving up versus just wanting to stop? Because and I think you kind of half answered it, where it's just like you can't end on a negative note, and you can't end mid-season because you've made a commitment to something, right?
Yes.
And you got to see that out. Am I right in saying that?
Correct. Yeah. No, you always have to honor your commitments. That's one of the biggest things. I've tried to live by. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Especially if it's a handshake. I want people to be able to look at me and say, okay, he shook my hand and said he was going to do it. It's a done deal. Yeah, we have contracts and all that stuff, but if I say I'm going to do it and shake your hand, boom, it's done. It's done. So I try to pass that on, to them. If you say you're going to do something, follow through with it, even if you don't like it. Yeah, I want to tell them, how much stuff I've done over my career. I didn't want to do it, but I went through and I did it anyways. And it helps you in the long run because it lets you know that you can overcome a lot of things when you're going and you're just like, oh yeah, that's right, I got to do that. Okay, get up, be consistent, and just start the process. You know, that's what it's about. Just start the process, and then you can kind of find your way into it.
Man, that's such a good learning piece. I love that. What I really want to talk about is your transition out of professional sport. I've got a lot of mates who I've seen transition well, I've seen transition poorly.
Yeah.
I'm going through a transition myself. I'm 2 years out of professional sport, and so I sort of half understand, again, like professional sport's a roller coaster, but so is transitioning out. How was your experience transitioning out after playing for so long?
Tough.
Yeah?
It's hard. It's hard. I think mine was a little bit different than most people, which made it very awkward, you know, along with the toughness of it. Because when I announced my retirement and that I was going to retire, there was a coaching change after that season, and they brought, they were bringing Ruud Gullit in, and I will tell you now, I was the anti-coach, anti-coaching staff, anti-referees, I'm not doing any of that stuff. Screw that. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I've done my time.
Yeah. I've done my time. Yeah. One of the things, is, like for me, when I finished, this may be longer than I expected, but when I finished with the Olympics, basically from the Olympics, which would have been 92 until when I retired in 2007, up until 2005, but pretty much through 2007, I was doing year-round soccer, year-round at the highest levels. So you have the season that would go from basically mid-January all the way until like November, December, okay? November, December, depending on when you got knocked out. National team as well during that time with games and stuff in between, but always having a camp in early December. And so you're doing fitness and stuff. And then they would have a January camp where you're doing fitness in early January and have games at the end of January. So basically I had 2 to 3 weeks off for the entirety of, what is that, 92 to 2007? How long is that? I don't even know.
I don't know. I'm not
you know? 15, 16, I don't know. So when I was finally done, I was like, I'm going on vacation. I'm going around the world tour, you know, all of this stuff, and just gonna, you know, do all the things I always wanted to do. But after I retired, I remember it was, I'm not getting the days right, but it was like a Wednesday or something like that, and they were having like postseason stuff. I got a call that the new coach was coming in on Friday. They wanted me to be an assistant coach for him, and I had until Saturday to make a decision because they were like coming back in on Sunday. And I was like, wait, I got like 24 hours, you know, to make a decision on that. And so I literally just said, dude, you never know when this could come again or whatever. So I'll just go for it, you know. So I said yes to it. Probably a huge mistake. I look back, it's like I probably should have taken that time away from the game. Because that day that I walked in, the Sunday or Monday, I was walking into a team that wasn't that good, and walking in where you go right to the locker room, I was going left into the coach's office. Yeah. You know, and trying to deal with and then that whole time afterwards, trying to deal with all the players that I was, you know, just partying with like about 4 days ago. You know?
Yeah.
So it was tough. It was tough. And then with that, just the separation from the game and playing the game. Because I was there, it might have been easier for me, but there's a mental strain. There's obviously a physical change that you go through, but also a mental change that you go through. And I like to call it, almost like a depression, right? You're not getting that high. And I don't want to say depression like I had a severe thing. I'd almost call it like, let's say depressive episodes, where you're just like down, just going like, wow, okay. And you know, I was like, is this it? Is this what I'm going to be? I'm going to be an assistant coach here and just go through this path? It's like you're having life-altering thoughts because it's like, okay, am I going to be an assistant coach and go through this path? Do I want to take time off to travel? Do I want to do other things? Do I want to, you know, go into the broadcasting? Do I want to have a business here? You know, all these things. And for me, I didn't have a lot of time to think about it because I was boom right into something else. You know, so that hit me in a different way.
When you were playing, did you ever think about life after sport?
Not too much. Not too much, to be honest. I mean, it's funny to think, because like my first thought was, like while I was playing, was going to be, taking that time off, and then I was gonna, during that extra time off, I was gonna, go back to school. I wanted to get that degree, finish that up, and then kind of figure it out from there. That time period, because I was literally thinking I was gonna take like about 6 months, just to chill.
Probably well deserved, mate.
Yeah.
After so long, bro. That's probably well deserved.
Yeah, never quite happened.
Yeah.
But during that time, that's like the time I was going to go, okay, I can get away from the game, and then I can kind of sit. And look, I understand. I was fortunate that I was able to have that in my mind where I could take 6 months off and then figure out what I wanted to do. But that never came about. It was kind of thrust upon me.
How was it differentiating the two between turning left to go with the players and turning right? Because I've seen it like in sport. There's a lot of guys who will do similar things.
Right.
They might get fortunate enough to go into an assistant role or some sort of coaching role at the club. And I've seen a lot of mates struggle because, like you said, you're partying with the boys the weekend before. You've just been playing with them. You're still relatively fit because you just finished up, and mixing that to like not even being able to sit with them at lunch because now you're sitting with the coaches and the coaches are doing video, they're doing everything like that. How tough was it separating the two?
Oh, it was extremely difficult, especially when some of the players are like, come on, you can come out with us, come on. And you're thinking in your head, I admit it, the first time I was like, yeah. But then after a while, as that time wears on, you're just like, dude, I can't be doing that. I can't, how am I going to have the respect of like the players of if I'm out there partying with them and hanging out all the time? There's a definite strain on you mentally because it's a battle every day.
Yeah.
Mind you, I had 15 years of going right, and now I'm going left, and it was tough. It was tough, and then even tougher is dealing with some of the younger players, at least that can't comprehend it at all. And then some of the younger players that think they are brilliant, and you're just like, you do understand, just like last week or 2 weeks ago, I was hammering you because you couldn't pass a ball 10 yards, and now today, it's weird because you're still used to that tone where you want to hammer them. But now that you're a coach, you're expected to act with a different tone and a different sense of decorum when you're dealing with some of the players, especially the younger players.
Yeah, that would be an interesting space to navigate.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I don't have to do that, mate. I'll leave that to you. But obviously, like, hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? I think looking back on your career, was there anything that you would do differently in terms, and specifically more towards the transition part of it? And I ask this because selfishly, I'm interested. I'm interested in this space. Is there anything that you would do differently?
I probably would have prepped myself a little bit sooner, on the transition. Now I did to a degree, and I kind of fell into it, the broadcasting, where they were kind of asking me to come in and talk about various tournaments and stuff when I wasn't involved, when I was no longer on the national team, talking about the World Cup and all that stuff. So that did help, a little bit as far as something to do. But I wish I had prepped, more on, done some research on, this is what I want to do. This is the path that I want to take. I did rely too heavily on just having that time, and sometimes you don't get that. Every I know I always say a lot of different terms and stuff, but if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And that happened to me drastically. So I wish I had done that. I wish I had taken time, just to myself, more, because I think that would have allowed me to like decompress after all those years within the game.
After the coaching, did you get to have your 6 months off at all?
No, I haven't had 6
months. You got some kids. I know you're in full dad mode now.
Yeah, it's not happening anytime soon.
That's it. That's funny, man. But you talked about the commentating and your own business. How's that role looking for you now? What are you up to these days? Or more importantly, what are you passionate about these days?
Passionate about my family, my kids, more than anything else, and cheering my kids on and getting them to the sporting events and everything that they want to do. It's funny because I had heard all the time when I was younger, you heard, former players and all this stuff talk about their kids and in the sports, and I'm just like, I was like, yeah, whatever. But you know what? It's true, dude. It's true. When you see your kids have success at something, you really are just like, your heart swells and you get so proud. So that's one of the big things for me. As well, the broadcasting. You know, I've really enjoyed, you know, doing all the different broadcasting, the various tournaments, you know, over the years, you know, working with the different companies with, you know, Fox Soccer, Fox Sports, you know, going with just finished up the Copa America, you know, all that type of stuff. That's been good. I really enjoy that. I've also, now I've gone back, you know, and working with the Galaxy a bit, where I go in and help out with my, you know, the club that I helped start, you know, that whole thing, but also with them helping with you know, their second team, with their movement, you know, under the VCFC banner, where it's a second team. So it's MLS Next Pro. So it's the second division, you know, and then there's a team up in my hometown. So I help bring that team to my hometown, and that's like a passion play there, you know, because I've seen, you know, giving that opportunity for kids to just see what's possible, putting it right in front of them, I think is so important.
Amazing. Heaps happening. Very busy man, mate, very busy man, and I'm very grateful for your time. Mate, I love this conversation, man. I love your energy, I love your aura. Mate, before we do wrap things up, is there anything that you'd like to touch on that you think we missed in this conversation? What's the biggest thing that you'd like to touch on before we wrap it up?
Well, considering what this is for and everything, I would say the mental health side. I think that's really important when you look at that. And I know we touched on it about finishing careers, right? I think people need to realize, especially when we're talking about men's mental health and stuff, and this kind of translates to everyone. When you're finishing careers, there can be those depressive episodes, and it needs to be addressed, and there needs to be understanding with it, because it's not just about professional athletes. And I said it a little bit earlier, there's various areas where people are expecting something to happen, and sometimes it doesn't. It could be, and I'll relate it to soccer, it could be after club soccer that it's done. You didn't want it to, but it's done. It could be after college soccer, you know, and these are things that people have to realize. You could be a Division I athlete, yeah, I'm gonna go pro, blah, 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 and whatever, and then it doesn't happen. That's where those little episodes can creep in, and it's very important that people understand it, people talk about it, you know, because those episodes, they can lead to bigger and worse things if no one talks about it and no one's really understands it. And then as far as the men's side, and when we talk about it, I know men talk about it all the time. Everybody expects the men to be like, oh, they're fine, you know, and it really is true that men internalize everything, and it's not always fine. So to all the guys out there, you know, call your bro up, you know, say what's up, you know, make sure that they're okay. It is, and I know we're just like, oh, we don't want to be sensitive and all that type of stuff, but just say, is everything good? That's the most important thing. Just say, you all good? That's it. Check in.
Mate, I love that. Encouraging conversation. And I think that's why these conversations are so important. So, mate, Cobi, thank you so much for your time. I really, you know, I'm very grateful for you coming on and just being so open about your own experiences, and you pass on a few golden nuggets, not just to the audience, but to me as well, mate. So thanks for your time, and mate, good luck with the LA weather, brother. It's, it's beautiful out here. We've got to get you over to Australia at some stage.
There we go. I'm happy to go back.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.